Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Reducing Improper Payments with Automation, Robotics, and AI, sponsored by Automation Anywhere on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today, Keith Nelson, the Global Head of Public Sector for Automation Anywhere, Tim Persons, the Chief Scientist at the Government Accountability Office, John Felstead, the Chief of Enterprise Integration and Technology Services at the Defense Logistics Agency, and Adam Goldberg, the Executive Architect at the Office of Financial Innovation and Transformation at the Bureau of Fiscal Service for the Treasury Department. We were talking the last segment a little bit about the impact of RPA, and one of the big issues that we haven't touched upon that I want to go down this path is around data. And data, it's kind of got mentioned, but data is really driving everything we do with any type of automation, any type of artificial intelligence. So let me start with Tim. You guys, GAO is a data agency for the most part.
Yes.
How are you guys ensuring that the data in is not garbage out?
Right. So great question. There's perpetually, I will say, there's always going to be some amount of concern, or one might say from a quantitative or a data science perspective, some fuss about the data. There's going to be some incompleteness to it. It might have some amount of error to it, and so on. So you do have to care about what's going in. Garbage in, garbage out is not solved magically by an RPA, AI, ML, and so on. So I think it's important. But nonetheless, in today's world where there's a large amount of datification, there is a lot of imperfect data, and yet there's still been a lot of advances and benefits out of data. And I had the chance to lead 2 studies at GAO strategically about this technology, about data analytics innovation, as well as artificial intelligence writ large. And data are the new oil. This is the data economy. And it's really about how we think about the data as an asset and in certain facets of it. We don't necessarily naively accept all of it on face value, but there is a key value in having key quantitative people, data engineers, data architects, and so on. I think that's a lot of the newness of what's needing to be installed at these agencies. And I think you're seeing a macro trend of the recognition of the importance of the data. And I think hopefully over, like fine wine, over time, data will become better when it's used more, when it's shepherded more in terms of what goes in, maybe more careful on the collect, maybe more careful or sophisticated on the processing, error correction, and so on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here in this regard, and I think you're seeing it in the rise of the chief data officers around the CFO Act agencies and so on.
And that's the thing, don't let the imperfect
enemy of the good enough.
Exactly.
That's
when it comes to data
right.
specifically. Yes. Adam, talk about data, because Bureau of Fiscal Service, also another big data agency. Everything you guys get in from a financial standpoint, you have to kind of process through. And how have you guys dealt with that challenge?
From a data standpoint, right now we're really, we need to look at the business processes themselves to understand where we are digitizing information and where we're not digitizing information. One of the interesting lessons learned was recently we were working with an agency who wanted to do a bot to get information into a treasury system. And when the agency briefed this out to our leadership, there was shock that we would design a system that required an agency to manually input data into that application. And RPA is going to be one of many tools that is going to help us digitize the information. Tim used the phrase, data's the new oil. I like to say data's the new water. So the greatest civilizations in the world have been able to reclaim water and exploit that for their benefit. And I think that the future is data now. So the more that we have digitized, the more we will be able to do with that information, including identifying improper payments or just reviewing documentation to see if there's the possibility of an error in that. And being able to look at that end-to-end process will also allow us to say, where am I going to get the most benefit out of digitizing the information that wasn't previously?
Keith, you heard both Adam and Tim talk about the importance of data. When you talk to your federal customers, or do they understand the importance of data, or are they garbage in, garbage out still?
They're all about data quality, data integrity, and also I came from a recent federal position at the Department of Transportation, and when I thought about data calls and the pain points of trying to chase down bits of information. Department of Transportation is a significant grants agency. I think they do about 50 billion, 60 billion in grants every year. And so when you're trying to sum up what's going on with grants in a particular state or in a particular area, you got to go into 15, 20, 30, 40 different systems to get different bits of data, and everything comes back on a manual spreadsheet, and there's always missing cells. And so data calls is one of my top areas that there should be some automation that helps out in there. That area.
I hope OMB is listening, right?
Exactly.
At the very least. Adam.
I would add to, RPA can help you automate things, but there's going to be a suite of tools that need to be deployed to help us connect the data to other data. So we were earlier talking about improper payments. Well, a good deal of the improper payments are really things that occur in federally funded state administered programs. So how do we get a window into that? That's bigger than RPA, but those are areas where emerging technology is going to need to play a greater role than it has in the past in order for us to make greater headway into these challenges.
Tim, is the GAO working through some of these challenges of data right now? Because a lot of times you depend on data from DLA or from Treasury.
Yes, absolutely.
And at the same time, you also have your own internal collection.
Sure, and that's right, because we have to be stewards, we are stewards of executive branch agency data, typically, so that means a lot to us. We've been in the data analysis game for decades, so this is not new. We have a whole group focused on methodology, as well as highly trained statisticians and data analysts just working on this issue to make sure that we're not falling into the garbage in, garbage out, how we ask the right questions, do we understand sort of the error bars around these particular things, and what can be said or not said according to our quality assurance system as we do our work. So it's very important, and having that key focus and leadership in that area has been key for GAO. It's just going to be even more pressing when you talk about very large data sets. How do you validate those sort of things, or messier sets that come from different disparate parts and things. So there's still work to do, but that is nonetheless a key focus.
We know data is driving so much of this, but there also, the other piece that's driving the use of bots and why agencies have been successful is the impact, the benefits. We talked a little bit about it, but John, let me just turn to you on this discussion a little bit. Is DLA worried about the using bots because they don't have enough people, because you're facing retirement crunch, because there's too much work and not enough people? What's the real reason why bots are catching on beyond how easy they are and the benefits we see so quickly?
So DLA has a problem that I think all agencies have. There's more work to be done than there are people to do it. So yes, there is attrition through retirement or people just leaving to go into different areas. But the biggest problem is the amount of work that needs to be done. So again, if we can take off this repetitive work, this low-hanging fruit, mundane, repetitive work, and allow people to start working on the critical thinking, refocus what they're doing, it's a huge benefit to the agency, the efficiency of the agency, and in the end, that means better support to the warfighter.
You talked about 60 bots equal maybe about 80 FTEs
annually.
How do you measure that? Like based on the work that they do, based on the number of transactions they process versus how many transactions I could process or you?
The formula at DLA that's been accepted is essentially how often that process runs, how many people it takes to run that process, right? And there's other little smaller qualifiers, but again, that's what it relies on. And the only thing that trumps that possibly is audit support. So
right.
That's the biggest driver, is how many hours are we contributing to the workforce. That tends to move it up on the priority list. Something like audit support where we can get something done to meet an NFR, push something up above as well.
Adam, jump in.
One of the things that's driving the use within Treasury is that there are some services that Treasury does for agencies that they don't get a choice in. we make payments, we help arrange collection arrangements, things like that. But there are other services that Treasury provides that agencies can elect to come to us for. And right now, that business is growing. And the RPA, the bots, allows us to grow the business without necessarily growing the workforce. So a lot of the bots right now are being used in entry-level positions where those individuals don't tend to stay in the jobs for a long time because they want to move on to another position. So we can put those bots in those entry-level positions and push the individuals to do other types of analysis and work for our customers. So it's really a great opportunity for someone who has a growing footprint in government.
And Tim, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think the story that I'm seeing, and again, there's two key examples here with DLA and Treasury on this, but it is, I've yet to meet an agency, department, bureau, anything that isn't being asked to do more with less. And I don't think that's going away. And so I think there's also that particular challenge, plus the fact of the problem or the complexity space, the complexity scale is going up on things. And so it means that we need our workforce to spend more time on that higher complexity, critical thinking like function, and away from these things that not only can be automated but should be automated, because we don't want to keep incurring the opportunity cost on our civil servants and creating that better federal government that we all want and need to happen in this environment.
And really, Keith, the best thing about bots is they can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they don't need a break. They don't ever get sick, or I guess they could have a virus, but that's a whole cybersecurity discussion, right?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that people maybe don't process immediately, but see the benefit right away.
They're very versatile. You could, given the proper policies, and obviously there's some adjustments in certain areas to make this more flexible. But they can do different things at different times. Maybe if there's one process that only occurs at this time of day after business hours close, you can execute it then, and then during the day they can do something else. They're very, very flexible, very, very versatile. If you upgrade to a new technology, a new system, you can modify the same bot to work with that one that used to work with the old version of it. It's and they're getting smarter and smarter and harder to stump. Used to be, you might need a bot that says, I'm reading this website and I'm looking for the search box in the center of the page. And then they redesigned the web page and it moved down to the bottom. Well, the bot is smart enough to pick up that and say, I know what a search box looks like. I don't care where it is on the page. I'm going to pick it up no matter how they redesign the site. And so that used to break a bot, not so much anymore. They're getting better, and that's what we're calling some of the AI-infused.
When you break
bots.
a bot, does sparks fall out? Does it go in circles? And
If you break a bot, you're no worse off than you were without a bot. So you haven't really lost a lot.
Tim, I want to bring up something, because you then go back to something you said. Complexity of the scale of what the federal workforce is being asked to do is increasing. So moving them away, that's all part of this workforce change that the bots are actually bringing. How is GAO addressing those challenges of the workforce? Because even though I said earlier on, people are less worried about losing their job to a bot, there's still a culture change, and you brought that up several times.
Sure. Well, GAO is full of highly intelligent analysts. They have to deal with complex issues, not just looking at a given agency or program, but looking at the broader issues going on. That is not going to go away. So a lot of what we're taking is how do we help augment them, especially again, under the leadership of our chief data scientist, our innovation lab. How do we take that information and help better convert questions to answers in less time with more incisive outcomes or greater outcomes or impact to help the Congress in its oversight, insight, foresight type function. So that's really the way we're taking it, and people are central to that. So it's walking alongside them and with that narrative, and where there's a need to upskill, to train, that cannot be overlooked and should not be invested in. As well as just recognize, again, the latent human capital that you have. We have digital natives now coming in to our agencies, and they're used to working with all of these technologies in this way. They're just like my kids, I learn from them on these technologies. I think that's a huge opportunity. My kids are teaching me on that, just like in a generational sense. The younger feds coming in, the new folks can start to ask questions about why are we doing it this way. It doesn't mean that you disrespect the fact that there may be reasons and so on, but you can at least have the space to ask that question and have a culture that asks those in a safe way, and then an environment to try and test things out, like in an innovation sandbox type environment.
We're just about at time, but before I let the panel go, I'm going to bring John. You guys are probably further ahead in some ways in using bots than a lot of other agencies. What's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest pothole that other agencies should avoid? Just give me a quick 30 seconds of advice.
So the big thing is authentication method of your bots. We've put in soft certificates with hardware security module. Now DoD is moving to PIV. We don't know what that's going to mean to us, so that's a challenge. The other challenge I mentioned earlier was separation of duties. Humans cannot have accounts payable roles and accounts receivable roles. That does not pertain to a bot. The bots will do exactly what you tell them to do. So we're pushing to have the bots to have dual roles, and that's hard for the cybersecurity folks and whatnot to swallow. So those are a couple of key places that we're really dealing with. The other thing I want to mention is bots run 24 hours a day, but systems are not always available 24 hours a day. And one of the things we found important was to track also system availability, maintenance windows and whatnot. So I wanted to just point that out while I had a chance.
That's actually a really important point, because yes, you think you can run them all day, but if the system's can't pull the data from it, the bot can't do its job.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. There's so many more things to talk about. So I appreciate everyone's time. So first of all, let me thank my guests. Keith Nelson, the Global Head of Public Sector for Automation Anywhere. Tim Persons, the Chief Scientist at the Government Accountability Office. John Felstead, the Chief of Enterprise Integration and Technology Services at the Defense Logistics Agency. And Adam Goldberg, the Executive Architect at the Office of Financial Innovation and Transformation at the Bureau of Fiscal Service for the Treasury Department. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Reducing Improper Payments with Automation, Robotics, and AI, sponsored by Automation Anywhere on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I've been your host, Jason Miller. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Automation Anywhere.